Very good evening to all of you. On behalf of Committee for Members and Practice of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, I welcome you all in today's VCM on representation before authorities as well as the stress management. In order to have this important two topics, we are having with us two eminent speakers, two eminent personalities, as well as the very renowned speakers, CA Gaurav Jain ji and CA Karan Nijavan ji. So, on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice, I welcome you all. Gaurav ji, welcome to you. Welcome to you, CA Karan Nijavan ji, for
Thank you.
this wonderful VCM and giving their consent to deliberate on with your expert expert knowledge, sharing with the members. And on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice, I also welcome all the members who have joined today's VCM. So before we start, Gaurav ji, I would like to introduce Gaurav ji and Karan ji. Gaurav ji will take the session on representation before authorities, and Karan ji will take the on stress management and the art of living. I would like to introduce Gaurav ji. Gaurav ji is LLB from Delhi University and is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. He is associated with Delhi High Court Bar Association ITAT and editorial board ITAT, Delhi Bar Case Reporter, International Council of Jurists, and at present he is advocate ex-partner Vash Associate and Associates. Gaurav ji is practicing as an advocate and is also fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India with over 17 years of expert experience with specialization in direct taxes. His specialization is representing and handling direct tax litigation of various corporate before Commissioner Appeals, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, High Court and Supreme Court. Gaurav advises various corporates, multinational corporations and HNIs on complex direct tax matters, as also advising on restructuring of businesses and wealth. Gaurav is a member of editorial board of ITAT Delhi Bar and is actively involved in digesting summary of cases of Delhi Tribunal Monthly Journal. He is regularly invited as a speaker by various forums, also authored articles spreading on complex issues relating to the international taxation, domestic tax, black money law, Benami law, etc. in reputed tax journal. Welcome to you, Gaurav Jain ji, in today's VCM. Welcome. See, Karan Nijavan ji is also a chartered accountant. He's a professional and he's a 2006 batch pass out, having more than 15 years and more of corporate experience in the companies like Nokia India Private Limited, MPS Telecom Private Limited, and VRP Telemart Limited while working with MPS. For the year 2017, he decided to leave corporate world and started his own chartered accountant practice with the name Karan Nijavan and Associates. He's a certified yoga teacher with Ministry of Ayush also. He's the art of living teacher since 2009, and along with CA profession, he is a teaching stress elimination techniques in various colleges like Sriram College of Commerce, IIT, BITS Pilani, and corporate like Maruti, Honda, L&T, etc. His love to spread happiness around by spreading his knowledge. So welcome to you, Karanji, and we are honored we are having with two great personalities with us today, Gaurav ji and Karan Nijavan ji. So without wasting much more time, I request Gaurav ji to please start his deliberation and enlighten all our members with your expert knowledge. Over to Gaurav ji, please.
Thank you, Anilji, for a warm introduction. Before I start, I want to congratulate you for choosing two very diverse topics of the day. One, representation before tax tribunal, and other, relieving from stress management. I think both the topics are poles apart. So when we will go forward and deal with my deliberations on tribunal practice, one would gather that yes, it is a little bit stressful. It is an expert area, but it's a stressful area. And I think to counter that, you have invited Karan to teach our fellow members as to how to manage.
That's why we have kept your session as first,
I congratulate you for
session as next. So first of all, the stressful environment, then to stress release environment.
Perfect. So I congratulate you for that. And may I have your permission to put on my slides? I have prepared some small deck.
Please, sir. Kindly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So is it visible, Anilji?
Yes, it is perfect, sir.
So, friends, the topic that is given to me today is with respect to practical aspects of representing appeals before Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Before I go into niceties of this particular practice area, it would be first important to understand the background and importance of a tribunal. Friends, tribunal is a very important forum. As we all know, this is the final fact finding authority when it comes to appeals. And not only that, it is also the final forum for us as chartered accountants. We as chartered accountants, this is the last forum where we can appear, because post that appeals would go to High Court or Supreme Court, which can only be represented by the advocates. So for us as a chartered accountant, considering it's a final fact finding authority and last forum for us to represent, assumes lot of importance. And friends, tribunal is also important because the kind of orders tribunal pass, they are speaking orders, they are judicious orders which are tested by courts at higher forums, and therefore tribunal is very conscious while delivering its judgment. And when we see the statistics, having regard to the quality of the orders passed by the ITAT, 80 to 90% of the ITAT orders are confirmed at higher forums. So therefore, so these are available in public domain. These are speaking orders, and it finally decides the controversy between the assessee and the revenue. So for that reason, tribunal assumes lot of importance to us, and it is important that we understand, learn how to practice before this forum so that we can bring justice for our clients. Now, before I move forward on what are the various aspects of practicing before tribunal, we should try to also understand the source of the constitution of ITAT. Friends, unlike High Court and Supreme Court, which are constitutional courts in the sense that constitution itself gives source for constitution of High Court and Supreme Court. High Court and Supreme Court gets power from the Constitution of India itself. But insofar as tribunals are concerned, be it income tax tribunal or any other tribunal, the powers are not in the Constitution of India. Constitution of India only empowers the government to create, to put in the statute that a statute can empower a tribunal to decide controversy with respect to specific issues. So unlike High Court and Supreme Court, tribunal is a statutory body, and for income tax appellate tribunal, the source is in the Income Tax Act. So all the powers relating to adjudication of appeals, or what kind of powers tribunal have while adjudicating the appeals, the source of that is Income Tax Act, and more particularly sections 250 to 255 of the Income Tax Act. So this is where tribunal gets its power from. How it is constituted, what kind of powers it have while adjudicating the appeals, all is contained in the Income Tax Act and nothing else. And along with the rules, so we have Income Tax Act containing powers of the tribunal, and the rules relating to its day-to-day functioning are contained in Income Tax Appellate Tribunal rules. We will deal with some finer aspects of both the Income Tax Act and rules in my deliberations subsequently. The other important aspect of tribunal is that while it is creature of a statute, that is Income Tax Act, but it has all the trappings of a civil court. It has all the powers of civil court in the sense it can summon the parties, he can examine witnesses, he can impose costs just like any civil court would do in the normal civil litigation. But having said that, I have all the trappings of the court, but the mannerism and procedure of conduct of hearings before the tribunal are substantially informal when they are compared to the proceedings before civil court. Informal, I would mean that when we go to civil court, there are a lot of processes and procedures to be followed, both at the time of arguing and both for the purpose of laying down evidences before the court. Unlike that complicated procedure in the civil court, the hearings before the tribunal are quite informal. Friend, my visible and audible now. सर एक मिनट मेरे को दीजिए, अभी भी नहीं आ रहा.
So इंटरनेट कनेक्शन में इशू है सर, आवाज खोलिए आपने।
and only share the screen.
यस सर, आप स्क्रीन शेयर करिए सर।
ठीक है सर, ठीक है। Now better? Shall I continue?
सर स्क्रीन नहीं आ रही अभी भी आपकी, आपका वीडियो आ रहा है।
वीडियो तो मैंने बंद कर दिया।
अब आ रही है स्क्रीन आपकी सर। प्लीज स्टार्ट सर। IT टीम, इट इज विजिबल
अब आ रही
फ्रॉम
है?
योर साइड? हाँ, स्क्रीन इज विजिबल।
चलिए ठीक है।
गिरीश जी, इट इज विजिबल। टेक सपोर्ट, इट इज विजिबल।
प्लीज गाइड।
ओके सर, सर कंटिन्यू सर।
Okay. So my apologies, friends, for this low bandwidth issue. So I was at the nature of informal proceedings before ITAT. So unlike civil court, as I pointed out, the nature of things before tribunal are quite informal. We just need to put in our wakalatnama, make an appearance, and file our papers and argue the matter before.
Sir, PPT is not visible now. Once again.
अब visible है?
हाँ जी, अब visible है।
So moving forward, friends, unlike high courts, as we all are aware as citizens of India, we have high courts across different states in the country, like Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court, Andhra Pradesh High Court, etc. And though the orders of the High Court are binding in that jurisdiction, and the mannerism and procedure of practicing before High Court are state specific, are court specific. But unlike that, the tribunal is one single body having its head office either at Bombay or Delhi, presided over by the president of ITAT, and there are different benches of tribunal across different states. Benches can be considered as branches of ITAT. It is not that they have their different procedures relating to practice or hearing. The code of conduct is same. These are like branches of one single body, that is ITAT. And ordinarily, as a matter of custom, the various benches of the tribunal tend to follow the decisions rendered by one bench to the other. They don't tend to deviate, because, and this is for the reason that they are considered as one single whole. So this is how tribunal is constituted. What is the broad functionality of the tribunal? Friends, tribunal, like high courts, is generally constituted by a division bench. Division bench means it comprises of two members, two judges. One is a judicial member and another is an accountant member. Judicial member comes from a judicial background. He is either a law officer or an advocate. An accountant member comes from an accounting background. Primarily, he is a chartered accountant or officers of the revenue. The idea behind comprising of two of judicial and accountant members is to give a blend of law and an expert on an accounting and tax background, because tax, friends, has nuances of accounting, and therefore an expert from the accounting background has been considered to be constituting a bench. So generally matters are heard by division bench. As an exception, there is single member bench also, where the bench comprises only of a single member, but single member bench is constituted only in small matters, that is where assessed income do not exceed 50 lakhs. So where the assessed income is not more than 50 lakhs, then the matter is heard by a single member. Where the income exceeds 50 lakhs, then the matter will go to a division bench comprising of judicial member and accountant member. And unlike appearance or hearings before CIT appeal, before tribunal, the matter is represented by both authorized representative of the assessee as also the representative of the department, who is popularly called a departmental representative, who is generally an IRS officer nominated by CBDT and posted at ITAT. So whenever the matter happens, the case is argued from both sides. The assessee side is represented by his AR, who is either a chartered accountant or an advocate, and department is also represented by an IRS officer. The hearing takes place, and then we can expect decision from the tribunal. The another important aspect of appearance and hearing before the tribunal is the dress code. Dress code, friends, is extremely important. Before CIT appeal, one can still go without a proper dress code, but in tribunal, the appearance without a proper dress code is strict no. And dress code would mean that when we are appearing physically, we have to a chartered accountant will have to wear a proper tie and a coat, and an advocate will have to appear in the dress code prescribed in the bar rules, that is black coat and a bow, and same goes for the lady representatives. And the importance of dress code cannot at all be undermined, because we have seen practically that when authorized representative appears without a proper dress code, then he's not only pointed out by the bench, and his matter is also not heard. The matter will be adjourned and will be passed over. So the one and the representatives appearing before tribunal must ensure that they appear in a proper dress code. Now, friends, third and fourth important point or important aspect of tribunal is constitution of special benches and third member. In case you are reading the orders of the tribunal, you would have seen orders of special bench or orders of third member. What are they? Special benches are bench which is more than a division bench. That is, it is not restricted to 2 members, but a bench comprising of more than 2 members, that is at least 3 members or 5 members in odd number, so that a decision can be given by way of a majority. And what are the circumstances when the special bench is constituted? Special bench is, friends, constituted when a question of law of seminal importance arises. For instance, when there is, as I pointed out, there are different benches of tribunal across different countries. And in case a bench at Delhi, for an example, takes a view on a question which is different from a decision taken by a bench at Bombay or any other state, then there is a sort of dissent in a judicial view on a question by different benches of the tribunal. Now, in order to resolve that issue, in order to bring consistent view of the tribunal on that issue, special bench is constituted at the recommendation of the parties, which is approved by president of the tribunal, and the decision is heard by all the majority of the members, and the decision taken by majority, for instance, it's a 3-member special bench, then a decision of 2 members over 1 would be considered as a majority judgment, and the majority judgment will prevail over minority view. So it is in this kind of a situation that a special bench can be constituted, where a majority view holds the field, and it is binding on all once the special bench decision is given, it is binding on all benches across the country. and special bench is constituted in terms of section 255(3) of the Income Tax Act. The another variation of special bench is third member decision. The constitution of third member is in a different circumstance. Special bench, as I pointed, is constituted when there is a dissent in different benches of the tribunal across country, whereas third member is constituted when there is a dissent between judicial member and accountant member who has heard the matter. So I'll explain. So for instance, if a matter is fixed before a division bench comprising of judicial member and accountant member, and when it is argued, both judicial member and accountant member are not in a position to come to a common view. Judicial member comes to a different conclusion on the matter, and accountant member comes to a different conclusion on the matter. Then we call that there is a dissent in the judicial and accountant member. In order to resolve the dissent between both the view formed by judicial and accountant member, a third member can be roped in by the president, and generally it is a senior member. It is either the vice president of the relevant bench or president itself, who will sit in the bench to resolve the issue and take a decision on the matter. So third member will either concur with judicial member or with accountant member. So whosoever he concurs with, the decision of the third member will be binding for both the division members as also for the assessee, and will prevail over for in that particular matter. So this is a variance when larger benches can be constituted in ITAT, that is one special bench and two third member, and I have explained the circumstances when these can be constituted. So this is overall a background or an overview of what is tribunal and how it functions, and what are the different how it is constituted in terms of division bench, special bench, third members, etc. Now we move forward to step-by-step process of making representation and appearances before tribunal. The first aspect that one would need to see is what kind of appeals can be filed before ITAT. Friends, appeal before ITAT is governed by section 253 of the Act. If my friends, if my members who are hearing me are appearing before CIT appeal, then they would know that in an appeal before CIT appeal, the appeals mentioned in section 246A of the Act can only be filed before CIT appeal. Akin to section 246A, for ITAT, the section governing filing of appeals is section 253 of the Act. It is only the orders mentioned in this section can be appealed to ITAT, meaning thereby that all and every order passed under the Act cannot be appealed before ITAT. It is only the orders which are mentioned in this particular section can be appealed. So I'll give you certain examples of orders which are passed in the Act but cannot be appealed to ITAT at all. So for instance, the first and foremost is an assessment order under section 143(3) or 147. We cannot directly appeal against those orders before ITAT. We will have to file an appeal before CIT appeal, and when CIT appeal adjudicates upon those orders, we can file appeal before ITAT. Then the other variant of an order is order under section 264. That is a revisionary order prejudicial to the interest of revenue. If a 264 order is passed by the CIT, then even that cannot be appealed before ITAT. For that, we will have to file a writ petition before the High Court. And similarly, there are order disposing objections as prescribed in section 148A in 147 proceedings. Even that kind of order cannot be appealed before ITAT. But there are certain orders which can be directly appealed before ITAT. That is the CIT appeal order. Or for instance, in case of a charitable institution, the order granting registration under section 12A or 12AA or 12AB under the new Act, they can be directly appealed or challenged before ITAT. Order passed by CIT under section 263, that is a revisionary order when it is prejudicial to the interest of assessee, that order can be directly appealed before ITAT. ATG order approving the society for the purpose of donations, that can be appealed before ITAT. Order imposing penalty by the CIT appeal or by the CIT in 263, those orders can be appealed directly before ITAT. So friends, when we decide where we have to go to ITAT, we should see sincerely scrutinize section 253 and see whether my order is found in that section or not. If my order is there, then I can file a direct appeal before ITAT. Now, similar as we discussed, that appeal before tribunal is represented both by the assessee and department. So even department has a right to file appeal before ITAT. So when an assessment order goes to CIT appeal, before CIT appeal, friends, you would be aware there is no appeal by the revenue. But when it comes to ITAT, the revenue also has a right to file appeal. So if there is a CIT appeal order and revenue is aggrieved by the CIT appeal order, then even revenue has the right to file appeal before ITAT, just like assessee has a right. So that's a departmental appeal. But yes, there is a caveat. While assessee can challenge appeal for any tax amount before ITAT, there is an embargo on a departmental appeal. Department cannot file appeal if the tax effect is below 50 lakhs of rupees. So in case the assessee has won an appeal before CIT appeal and tax effect of that appeal is less than 50 lakhs, then it's an end of the matter. Department cannot file further appeal before ITAT. But if it's more than 50 lakhs, department can take you to ITAT also. And one more thing, the department do not have right to file appeal against all orders. For instance, in case of international tax or transfer pricing matters, when the DRP adjudicates or directs AO to pass a order in a particular manner, while assessee has a right to file appeal against the assessment order passed pursuant to directions of DRP, the department do not have any right to file appeal before ITAT. No right is vested with the department to file appeal against a 263 order or even a 264 order. There is no right with the department to file appeal against an order passed by CIT granting registration under section 12A or granting approval under section 80G. So again, the scope of department appeal is also circumscribed in section 254. So if the order is found in section 253, then department can file appeal. If it's not there, then even department do not have right to file appeal before the tribunal. So this is what is regarding filing of appeals before tribunal. I have explained that the appeal of department is circumscribed by tax effect, that is less than 50 lakhs. And what is tax effect? Tax effect is only the principal amount of tax along with surcharge and cess minus interest minus penalty. So while deciding whether the revenues appeal is admissible before tribunal or not, one should only see the principal amount of tax along with surcharge and cess minus interest. And if that is less than 50 lakh, then you can object appeal of the revenue before the tribunal. Now, we have discussed what kind of appeals can be filed before the tribunal. The next issue is how to file. What are the grounds which we have to take before the tribunal? So the appeal to the tribunal comprises of grounds of appeal, and grounds of appeal are very important. Grounds of appeal needs to be understood as distinct from arguments. Grounds of appeal would mean the reason for attacking an order. These are grounds of attack as to why I have come before the tribunal minus the arguments. In the grounds of appeal, one should stop short from raising arguments against the action of the lower authority. He should only restrict himself as to the reason why he is coming before the tribunal, and the articulation of these grounds or the reasons is of seminal importance. We have to be very concise and precise. The ground should not be elaborate. It is preferable that we give a heading before a particular ground so that it is clear to the members, to the benches of the tribunal, as to why assessee is raising a particular ground. And certainly, as I pointed out, it should be without any argument. It should not be narrative. It should be concise and precise. They should be properly numbered. It is important that when I am attacking different issues or the reasons of my challenge are different, then they are differently numbered. As a practice, if on a particular issue I have multiple reasons, then I take them as serial as a subset of one number. For instance, if there is one reason, then I take it under ground of appeal number 1, and sub reasons of that ground are placed under the head 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, etc. And when I switch to a new reason, it starts with a new number, that is 2, 2.1, 2.2, likewise. So it is important that we segregate each reason with a different number, so that it is very easy and convenient for our adjudicating officers, that is member of the tribunal, to understand why my assessee has come before me to attack while attacking a particular order of a lower authority. While there is no capping of the number of words to be used in grounds of appeal, which is in fact prescribed before CIT appeal, but there is no number limit before the ITAT. But as I pointed out, the ground should not be narrative. In fact, in practice, if grounds are found to be narrative, then tribunal generally rejects the appeal and asks assessee to revise the grounds and come again. So in order to avoid repetition and feel awkward of revising the grounds, it is better that we beforehand go with a concise grounds before tribunal. Now, similar to filing of appeal, there is another concept of filing cross objections before tribunal. And I'll explain the concept of cross objections. Cross objections is nothing but an appeal only, but it is by an opposite party. I'll explain how. So friends, I'll take an illustration. For example, before CIT appeal, you had 3 additions, and out of 3, 2 were substantive additions and third was a small amount. Now CIT appeal grants you relief on majority issues, that substantial issues were decided in assessee's favor, but a small issue was decided against you. Now you were relieved, you said that okay, I'm happy with the substantial relief being granted to me by CIT appeal. I don't want to go in further appeal before ITAT. I'll see if revenue will file appeal before ITAT, but I am convinced I'm not wanting to go to ITAT. I'll live with the small disallowance sustained by the CIT appeal. But to your disliking, revenue agitates the order of CIT appeal before tribunal on the substantial issues on which relief was granted. Now you will say that if revenue has filed an appeal, why not I also agitate the small issue which was sustained by CIT appeal? That small issue can be raised in cross objection. So I need not file an independent appeal before ITAT within a period of 30 days from the date of order. I can wait, I can sleep over, and when revenue file the appeals, within 30 days thereafter, I can file appeal on any issue which was decided against me. So cross objections is nothing but an appeal in terms of section 253(4) of the Act as well as the tribunal rules give status to the cross objection similar to an appeal, but it is by the respondent. I'll call it a respondent because when first party files an appeal, the respondent has a right to file appeal before tribunal, which is known as cross objections. And as we will see later in my deliberations, one can even take additional grounds before tribunal, so in its independent appeal. So since cross objections is akin to an appeal, additional grounds can be taken in cross objections also. Additional ground would mean, so for instance, if I missed to raise a claim before in my return of income as well as in the assessment order or in the CIT appeal order, and when my appeal was pending before ITAT, it suddenly struck to me that I have forgotten to raise a claim in all these forums. So tribunal permits me to raise that additional claim by way of additional ground, which I can raise it in my independent appeal as also in cross objections. So even if I'm standing as a respondent in appeal before tribunal by way of cross objections, I can raise additional claims through additional ground of appeal. So this is also important, friends. You can take note of it. Cross objections can be filed in terms of section 253(4), and the relevant form for filing cross objections is form 36A, which is to be filed within 30 days of receipt of notice intimating fixing of appeal filed by the opposite party. Another variant of cross objection is Rule 27 of Income Tax Appellate Tribunal rules. Rule 27 says that I can support the order of lower authority, that is CIT appeal, on a ground which was decided against me. So without filing an appeal, I can support the order of CIT appeal on a different ground, and I'll again explain it with an illustration. So let us say, friends, it was a 147 matter. My assessment was reopened under section 147, and I challenged that 147 order before CIT appeal on 2 grounds. One, I challenged the jurisdiction of the assessing officer in assuming section, in invoking section 147. That was my first ground. And without prejudice to the same, I challenged the addition made on the merits of the matter. Now, CIT appeal decides the issue in your favor on merits, but decides 147 against you. Now, when this has happened, since matter has been decided in your favor on merits, you are not an aggrieved party. There is no grievance at your end to file a further appeal before ITAT. So you put a silence. You do not file any appeal. You are not agitated on the issue of 147 being decided against you. But revenue will file an appeal against the relief granted to you by CIT appeal. So and since you are not aggrieved, you did not file any appeal. Now, in that appeal of the revenue, you can still agitate the issue of 147 by invoking Rule 27. That is, you can agitate, you can support the order of CIT appeal in deleting your addition on a ground other than on which relief has been granted to you. That is the action of the CIT appeal in dismissing 147 ground. So that is Rule 27, and Rule 27 is partially distinct from cross objections. I can even file cross objection on this 147 issue, but without filing cross objections, even in oral hearing, I can invoke Rule 27 to say that I want to support the order of CIT appeal on the issue of 147. So this is another variant of practice and appeal before tribunal, that is Rule 27. And in Rule 27, courts have held that I can even raise additional points. So for instance, I was arguing one of the limb of 147 before CIT appeal, and when the revenues appeal was pending before ITAT, there was some another jurisdictional issue which was decided by High Court. So although I did not argue it before CIT appeal, but I can raise it for the first time before tribunal through invocation of Rule 27, because I can raise additional points also in a Rule 27 application, and these are the various decisions which support this proposition. Now, when appeal is filed, friends, generally, as on today, there is a lag of about 3 to 4 years when your appeal will come up for hearing, because there is long pendency. At least in Delhi, there is a long pendency, and if you file appeal, then in the normal course, it will take about 3 to 4 years when your turn will come and you will get a chance to argue your appeal. Now, in order to expedite disposal of appeal, there is a concept of early hearing in the tribunal. Early hearing would mean that if there is some genuine reason that you want to jump the queue and argue your matter early, other than by way of a normal course, then you can file an early hearing application before the tribunal. Early hearing application will come up for hearing before the senior members of that particular bench, which is generally comprised of president or vice president of the ITAT. They will understand your reasons as to why you want to argue your appeal early, and if they are convinced, they will grant you an early hearing. But it is not in any and every case that early hearing will be granted. There has to be some genuine reason, genuine difficulty you are facing while your appeal is pending. If you can point out that genuineness, then your early hearing application can be granted. Ordinarily, the appeals against 12A orders or 263 orders, which have a consequential impact, so by way of subsequent assessment order or by way of invocation of 12-way order, since there is a consequential impact of these orders, tribunal in these cases generally willy-nilly grants you early hearing of your appeal. So this is one set of practice of jumping the queue by way of early hearing applications before the tribunal. The another important aspect of appeals is consolidation of appeals. Consolidation of appeals would mean that when there are multiple appeals of same assessee on an issue, and the assessee do not want to argue same issue on different dates before different benches, then he can apply for consolidation of appeals. That is, all the appeals involving common issue will be clubbed together, put together on a single day before a single bench for hearing. So common issues will be clubbed together, they will be argued on one day and can be decided. So in case there is a common issue, you can apply for consolidation of appeals, which will be decided by the senior members of the tribunal. And once they are convinced that all the appeals of a single assessee involves common issue, they can consolidate the appeals. Another variant of consolidation of appeals could be when for a single assessment year, an appeal against a single order, there is an appeal of the assessee as well as the revenue. Now, it's a mandate from the Supreme Court that appeals of different parties, that is assessee and revenue, from a single order should be heard together. So in case for an assessment year, there is appeal by both by the assessee as well as by the revenue, then one would need to willy-nilly apply for consolidation of both the appeals, which will again be heard by the senior member. After understanding that it is arising from a common order, they will put both the appeals on a single day. They can be argued on the single day and decision can be taken. So this is early hearing and consolidation of appeals. This is one procedure where you can know of, and the practice is that we will have to file these early hearing and consolidation applications before the tribunal. Now, another important aspect of arguing appeals before ITAT is that ITAT has power to grant stay on demand. Now, in most of these stations, when an assessment order is passed, it is the administrative CIT who can grant stay. CIT appeal generally do not have power to grant stay on demand. But unlike CIT appeal, tribunal has been specifically vested with power to grant stay, and there is a specific procedure, therefore, prescribed in ITAT rules as per section 254(2)A read with Rule 35A of the tribunal rules. Rule 35A prescribes for the format of the stay application which can be filed before the tribunal. The format I have listed down on the screen. That is, but the main crux of a stay application before the tribunal is that we should establish the prima facie facts as to why stay should be granted before the tribunal. What are the prima facie merits in the case that you should be granted a stay? In case there are no prima facie merits, or the issue is decided against you, or is covered against you by other decisions of the tribunal or higher courts, then you will not get a stay from the tribunal. But if you can convince the tribunal post filing the application that there are prima facie merits, that when the appeal is heard, it will be decided in your favor, then tribunal can grant you stay. The other reason for taking stay is once you establish the prima facie merits, you can also establish that there is financial constraint on your part. You are facing a liquidity crunch. You do not have funds to make the payment of tax demand. If you establish prima facie merits and financial stringency, then these two are also good grounds to take stay from the tribunal. While financial stringency is a good ground, but financial capacity to pay is not a ground for the tribunal to reject your stay of demand. So for instance, if the prima facie merits of the case are in your favor, but you still have financial capacity to pay, then tribunal cannot reject your stay just because you have financial capacity to pay. And there are decisions to that effect. I have listed few decisions on my screen share. The another important aspect is that tribunal cannot grant stay at a time for a period beyond 180 days. The idea behind stipulating time limit for stay is that tribunal hears and decides the matter early. The legislature do not want tribunal to linger on matters where stay is granted, and therefore they have put a stipulation in section 254 that a stay can be granted by a tribunal only for a limited period of 180 days, which can be further extended up to 365 days. So as per the statute, the tribunal can grant a stay in a particular period for a maximum period of 365 days and not beyond. But the courts have held that tribunal has inherent power to grant stay beyond 365 days if delay in disposal of appeal is not attributable to the assessee, because assessee should not be put at a back foot if there is no delay on his part in arguing or in getting a disposal of the appeal. If there is no delay on his part, then the courts have held that tribunal can extend the stay even beyond a period of 365 days. And this issue has now even been settled by Supreme Court in this case of Pepsi Foods, reported at 433 ITR 295. The recent amendment in stay procedure before the tribunal is that the Finance Act 2020 has amended section 254 to provide that tribunal cannot grant stay for the tribunal can grant stay only on minimum payment of 20% of the total tax. So akin to stay before when an assessment order is passed, the CBDT has said that assessing officer can also grant stay only subject to minimum payment of 20%. Similar to that, now there is a condition in section 254 also that tribunal can also not go below 20%. The constitutional vires of this provision of taking away inherent powers of tribunal are challenged before various forums, including at Delhi High Court. But another important question is that this amendment has recently been brought in by Finance Act 2020. So the question is whether this amendment is prospective or retrospective. In my view, considering it's a substantive amendment, taking away power of assessee to take stay from tribunal and taking away inherent powers of the tribunal, this should be considered as prospective. Prospective meaning that it should be applied to only assessment years for which assessment orders are passed after the particular date when this amendment was brought in the statute. All the assessment orders, all the preceding assessment orders should be governed by the old provision, and therefore there should not be any condition of imposing minimum deposit of 20%. But this issue is still subjective, not yet decided by any court or tribunal. But yes, there are decisions to support from other statutes where courts have held that inherent powers are, when inherent powers of a tribunal are taken away, they should be considered as prospective. That is that is assessment orders passed after that particular date. But we will yet to see if we find any orders in times to come saying that this amendment is prospective. Now, apart from stay application, considering that the power to grant stay comes from the inherent powers of tribunal, tribunal has some another inherent powers also. So it is not only that tribunal is empowered to only grant stay, but tribunal can grant stay on other proceedings also. So we have decisions coming from various high courts that suppose a quantum appeal is pending before ITAT, tribunal can even grant stay on consequential penalty proceedings. So for instance, if my quantum appeal is pending before ITAT, and while the appeal is pending, the assessing officer seeks to impose penalty on that particular matter, then I can directly apply to tribunal requesting that you kindly grant stay on continuation of penalty proceeding because you are seized of quantum proceedings. So even courts have held that tribunal has inherent power to grant stay on consequential penalty proceedings, and akin to penalty proceedings, if my appeal against 263 order is pending before ITAT, tribunal has even power to grant stay on the consequential assessment order that can be passed by assessing officer giving effect to 263 order. So tribunal has inherent powers in many forms, that is by way of grant of stay on tax demand or on stay of consequential proceedings, penalty proceedings, 143, 263 proceedings, etc. So we should be aware of all these powers of tribunal when my appeal goes to ITAT and take advantage of the seminal powers of the tribunal. Anilji, I hope I'm going slow. If there are any questions you can raise, or should we take it at the end only?
Yeah, I'll take at the end only, sir. You may please proceed for further 10 minutes. I will raise the questions at after 5-7 minutes, sir, because it's already 4:50. So we can take questions at.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Please.
Please. So friends, now having understand the various exhaustive powers of the tribunal, now let's take a brief snapshot of the powers of the tribunal while adjudicating an appeal. As we discussed at the beginning, that tribunal is considered as a final fact-finding authority, and it is considered as final fact-finding authority because in terms of section 255(6), the tribunal has been vested with all powers of income tax authorities as contained in section 131. That is, it can, just like an assessing officer, investigate into facts of a particular matter. So having vested with such kind of powers, and the tribunal to investigate into facts, it is considered as a final fact-finding authority. These powers are not available at further forum. Let us say if my further appeal will go to High Court, for High Court, the finding of fact given by ITAT is final. It will not, High Court will not go into investigation of facts. If it is held by tribunal that assessee has incurred this particular expenditure, then it's a finding of fact for the High Court. It will not go into investigation of this question whether the expenditure has been incurred or not. See, High Court will only decide whether, if this expenditure is incurred, whether it is revenue expenditure or capital expenditure, whether it is allowable expenditure or non-allowable expenditure. But the question of fact is final when the ITAT gives its finding on that. It cannot be questioned by any other higher authority, unless otherwise there is an exception that the High Court says that the finding of the lower authority is perverse. That's only an exception, but we are not discussing about an exception case. In general, the finding of fact by the ITAT is final. So as a result of ITAT being a final fact-finding authority, the ITAT can itself investigate into facts. It can call parties, it can call evidences, it can call additional evidences, it can summon parties, it can record witnesses. It can even set aside matter to the assessing officer in case the facts are not complete on the file, or ITAT is not satisfied with the factual finding by both the assessing officer or CIT appeal. It can set aside the matter back to the assessing officer or CIT appeal for fresh verification of facts. So that is one. It can itself peruse the record, as I mentioned. It can direct production of additional evidences. And then in case, the last important aspect is that in case ITAT feels that facts are not proper, parties are not supporting, both the revenue or the assessee is not supporting in coming to the fact finding before the tribunal, tribunal can even decide the matter against the respective party, be it assessee, be it assessing officer. So these are the powers which are vested with ITAT while adjudicating the appeal. While we have discussed about powers of ITAT, there are certain restrictions also on powers of ITAT. That is, tribunal do not have power of enhancement. Tribunal is an appellate forum. It is like a court where we have gone for grievances. Tribunal cannot expand our grievances. So if the assessing officer has made an assessment at 1 lakh rupees, and I am before tribunal to decide this issue whether the assessing officer was correct in making assessment at 1 lakh, while deciding that, tribunal cannot enhance the 1 lakh to 2 lakhs, 1,50,000. Tribunal do not have that power. Tribunal is only there to adjudicate the issues of parties, but not to enhance it. Similarly, tribunal cannot change complexion of a case. Complexion of a case would mean that if the grievance of the parties is on a particular issue, tribunal cannot change the complexion of the issue and decide it on a different ground. So for instance, if my issue before the lower authorities was whether the income from sale of shares is business income or capital gains, while adjudicating that particular issue, tribunal cannot change and say, no, it is not gain at all, it's a bogus sale of shares. It should not have been taxed as income. It's an undisclosed income. The tribunal cannot change complexion of the case. Similarly, for 263 order, if the CIT has passed a 263 order raising a particular issue, tribunal cannot expand it, cannot expand the scope of 263 order. So friends, basically how we have to understand is tribunal is a appellate forum. It is there to address your grievances and not to expand it. And therefore, tribunal cannot, while exercising its power, change the complexion of the case. And during the course of hearing before ITAT, friends, as I pointed out, it's a very informal method of hearing. The major document which we have to file before ITAT is paper book. Filing of paper book is of seminal importance. It assumes a lot of importance. It has to be in a particular format. Format is just that papers should be sequentially numbered. There should be a proper index to papers. Papers should be organized in a manner that papers for a particular issue are in one column and papers of another issue are on another column. They should not be mixed up. And during the course of hearing, we should sequentially refer those papers in order to provide ease to our members to understand the matter and give decision. So this is, friends, in order for the sake of time, I'm running short of time. I've given an overview of how to practice before tribunal. There are many issues. I think we will have to take some more time to delve into that issues, but I've tried to summarize and give bullet points of hearing before tribunal. We should try. It's a very important forum. It's the first forum where we can expect a judicious judgment, and especially in the current environment where everything is moving to faceless, be it assessment, be it CIT appeal. Tribunal for the time being is the only forum where we can expect a physical and a personal hearing, where a hearing would happen, where we could explain our facts properly to this forum and expect a good decision. So we should not miss importance of this forum. We should try to practice as much as before this forum with ease and with an expectation that we will provide justice to our assessee, to our clients. With that, with the liberty to dwell upon more issues at a subsequent point of time, I close the proceedings of the day today at here, and over to Mr. Anil for taking over the proceedings. Thank you so much, friends.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Anilji. I was just overstepping, so I was overstepping. So
it is already fine, sir. Just because of the technical glitch, we also started late. Camera नहीं खोला आपने?
Yes.
Can you hear me, sir? आपका भी हाँ camera खोल लीजिए, sir. There are two questions. One is a very simple question: how to prepare for ITAT? Simple.
No, so I think I have dwelt upon so many aspects of how to prepare before ITAT.
That's why I was saying that was a very.
I think so the simple answer to the simple query is that we should be confident. We should prepare our matter so much that there is confidence while appearing before tribunal. And when we have total grip over facts of the matter, I think there is no difficulty in arguing a matter before tribunal.
Right, sir. Right, sir. One is, are the tribunal part of High Courts only, and judicial members and accounts members are appointed by High Court, or it is a separate bench?
No, they are not appointed by High Court. There is a collegium where collegium may be formed by judges of Supreme Court or even High Court and law secretary and president of the tribunal, but they are appointed by Ministry of Law.
Okay.
A collegium can comprise from various organizations, be it Supreme Court, High Court, Ministry of Law, President of Tribunal, and the decision of the collegium selects who is to be selected as a member of the tribunal. So generally for an accountant member's post, it is chartered accountants or the IRS officers who apply whenever there is a vacancy, and their application is decided upon the collegium for accountant member, and for a judicial member, application is given by law officers or advocates of minimum practice.
Okay. One member is asking whether all hearings will be digital only now.
No, so it's not. So there is an amendment in law where the proposal is pending for making it faceless, but that has not yet been initiated. So insofar as present environment is concerned, as per law, physical hearings are to happen, but due to the pandemic, there is a partial shifting to the virtual hearings. So it depends from bench to bench. So for instance, if we talk about Delhi, about 50% benches hear the matters virtually and 50% benches function physically. So it's a hybrid system.
Hybrid system.
And this is just a variation for COVID.
Yeah, just because of COVID. Yes.
Just because of COVID.
Can an assessee may mandatory deposit in one appeal if there is a similar matters for 3 to 4 appeals in different years, and decide the matters on merit for appeal where mandatory deposit is paid? Can stay be granted in other appeals for deposit of mandatory deposit or recovery of demand?
No, so every order, we have to file a separate appeal for every order, even if there is a common issue in all different orders, but we will have to file appeal differently. There will be separate appeals, there will be separate deposit of appeal fees. it is different matter that once all the appeals are filed, they can be consolidated together to be put up before a single bench on a single day and argued on a single day. But appeals will have to be separately filed.
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. So that was all about the questions we have received yet for your deliberation, sir. It was wonderful deliberation and exemplary and fantabulous presentation by you, sir. So thank you so much from the core of my heart, and on behalf of CMP of ICI, I extend my heartiest thanks and request you to please remain for the next session also for Karanji's stress management.
Definitely.
So Karanji, once again welcome you, and I would like to request you with one of the questions which I have already received for you. Before your presentation, member is asking, hope you will cover with your presentation. Having the feeling of being satisfied is always beneficial, as said by many distinguished personalities. But sometimes one feels that such a feeling is a hurdle in progress. So how we can maintain a balance to manage it?
Thank you, Anilji, and it's so glad to hear a question before I start my deliberation. And,
yes.
And thank you, Gaurav-ji. It was so nice to hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am not taking care of the.
Thank you, Karan.
But it's so good to hear and listen to you. Thank you, Gaurav-ji, and thank you, Anilji. Yeah, definitely, Anilji. I would love to answer this question. So first thing first is when we say be satisfied, doesn't mean we should not strive to gain more. Satisfaction is the state of mind, and this mind thing I am going to cover in today's session. Because the problem arises when we want to have too much and we want everything in hurry. Want and wanting more don't create stress. Want and wants more in a hurry always gives us a stress. So we need to see and we need to check how we can deliberate upon this. So as we are moving from one very intellectual session, and Gauravji has in 1 hour has given us so much to digest. And before moving to the next session, I would like to start the session with one practical thing, so that we can prepare ourselves to listen to what I'm going to speak in the next session. So friends, what we are going to do, as we are talking about the stress elimination in this session, I will not only speak, I will ask you to do some activities so that we can actually experience how we can remove stress from our system. So first thing first, we are going to do a very simple pranayam breathing technique. Some of you might have heard about it. It is known as Bhramari. So what we are going to do, we need to put our fingers in the earbuds. Sit straight, and it would be good if you can do with me. What we need to do, we need to take a long deep breath in, and while breathing out, we need to make a humming sound like this. Like this. And we need to keep our ears closed with these 2 fingers. Yes, all of you can do with me. Put the fingers in the ears, close your eyes, take a long deep breath in, and make this humming sound. One more time, take a long deep breath in. One more time. And relax. You can bring your palms down. Keep sitting with eyes closed for a while. Observe your state of mind. Observe the impact of the humming sound on your mind. With full awareness, take another long deep breath in and breathe out. Slowly and gently. You may open your eyes. I hope you all find it good. Yeah. So we are going to talk about how we can eliminate the stress from our system. And before I proceed and talk about stress, I would like to share one actual incident which happened in my life while I used to work with a company in the corporate world. And it was some around 10 years back, but I still remember. So one of my team member who recently passed out from the college and joined our team in the corporate world, and along with along with the accounting profession, he used to participate in theaters. So one fine day, he invited us. He said, "Tomorrow, and me and my team, tomorrow I am going to participate in one theater, and in which I am going to play the role of the Hanuman. And I would love if you all can come and see my performance." And which we agreed to come. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, none of the team members could go and see his performance. So when the show ended and he called one of my colleagues, "Hey, were you there to see me?" So he said, "No, no, we are in the office because there was some emergency and we need to take care of that." So that guy feel very dejected. So, but in the enthusiasm to show how he is looking and how he has done is uh, good in the role, he came to the office from his theater in the same costume. And when he entered the room, everybody started laughing, looking at him. And he didn't understand what was happening, because in the theater everybody was appreciating his performance, and here in the office people and his team members are laughing at him. So what happened, I explained to him later on, yeah, you might be good in the role of Hanuman in the theater, but you cannot come into in the office in the role of Hanuman. In the office you have to come in the role of accountant only, worker only, employee only, and not as a theater artist. So my dear friends, this is what we do in our day-to-day life. We are not only chartered accountants, we are not only professionals, we are playing so many different roles. We are sometimes as a role of a father, sometimes as a role of a son, sometimes as a role of a spouse, sometimes there are so many different roles which we are playing. But when we mix these roles, stress happens. So we really need to see, when we are in the office, we are 100% in the office, we are with the family, we are 100% with the family, and how we can do that. So for that, we need to understand whatever we need to do in our life. Take anything, whatever you want to do in our life. You want to work, you want to go for movies, you want to play cricket, you want to go for travel, you want to go to mall for shopping, anything, whatever and everything you want to do that thing, you need to have energy. Yes? If energy is not there, you can't even enjoy your own hobbies. Like I love to play cricket, but if I am feeling depletion of energy in me, I will not able to give my best while playing cricket. So everything to do everything, we need to have energy. Now just count what all things you do in a, let's say, particular day or a particular week or a particular month. What all things you do. To do all those things, we need energy. And if you sum total of those things, we can treat as a demand, energy demanded from us. Let's say 40 hours I want to do my work, then 10 hours I want to spend on movies or traveling. Like this, if we all together all those things, we can say energy demanded from me. And then see how much energy you can supply. Energy supply means how much energy you are having to do all those things. And this gap between demand and supply is the stress. If energy demanded from you is less than the energy which you can supply to execute those things, that is stress. Like if we talk about in the technical terms or in today's online things, the stress is the low bandwidth. You are able to listen to me because my network is clear, my video is coming to you, my voice is coming to you. But if there is a low bandwidth either at my side or at your side, you will not able to listen to me. So this, we can understand stress is like a low bandwidth. So what we need to do when there is a low bandwidth, either we need to reduce the demand or we need to increase the supply. Yes. So sometimes, and fact, most of the time, reducing the demand is very difficult. Let's say by 31st of December, if we need to file all the returns, if we need to do annual audits and so many other things, we can't expect in reducing the supply. We have to do that. So what the only option left is we need to increase the energy level. Now the question arises, how can we increase our energy level? I hope you all are with me till now. Why I am discussing this is because the solution is very simple. But chartered accountants, we as a chartered accountants are very intellectual people. We always want to know why we are doing this. Some of you even might be asking why we have done this Bhramari Pranayam. So I will give you some 2-3 more practical aspects to beat your stress. But let's find out why we are having a stress. So till now what we have discussed, low energy level in the system cause stress. Now the question is how to increase our energy level. So there are 4 things by which we can increase our energy level. The first is food. Yes, if we don't eat properly, our energy level will go down. If we don't eat, if we just keep doing our work, and we don't have a breakfast, we don't have a lunch, we don't have a dinner, and the next day again we keep working, definitely we will fall ill or we will not able to do our best. So food gives us energy. But we need to be cautious. The only right quality of food in the right quantity and right manner gives us the energy. Most of you must be aware, let's say on the Sunday morning when we have lot of chola bhaturas or the rajma chawals and a big glass of lassi and all on the parathas, we don't feel very energetic. So food is a source of energy in a right quantity and the right manner. So food itself is a very good topic in itself, which we cover some other day. I am coming back to the next topic. Next thing, the next source of energy is sleep. Very, very important. Howsoever engaged you are, howsoever busy you are, 6 to 7 hours of sleep is very, very, very important. Sometimes when we stretch ourselves and we don't sleep for 2 to 3 days, we think we are doing our work, but the work quality cannot be that good, which we can do after having a proper sleep. So sleep is a second source of energy. And the third and fourth source of energy is on which I would like to spend more time are the third source of energy is breath. And fourth source of energy is calm and relaxed state of mind. This is where I would like to deliberate in today's session. So 2 things. The breath is a very vital source of energy. And the fourth is calm and relaxed state of mind is a very good source of energy. To understand this, we need to understand what is our mind. So mind is a bunch of thoughts. And just for the purpose of clarification, mind is not brain. Sometimes we correlate mind with the brain. Brain is a body organ who have its own purpose, but mind is something else. Mind is bunch of thoughts. Let's say if you are listening to me, you are absorbing me, your mind is comprehending what I am speaking. Your ears must be listening, but it's only through the mind you are able to comprehend. Are you with me? Yes. So mind is what, and there are some different tendencies of the mind. And one of the tendency of the mind is to oscillate between the past and the future. Mind keep on oscillating between the past and the future. Even here, become aware. You might be here listening to me, but your mind might be thinking out what I need to do after the session. Oh, that return has not been gone. Oh, I need to take care of that assignment as well. Or your mind be in the past. Oh, I had one assignment in the morning which I have not completed. Oh, my family member have asked something in the morning I have not done yet. Anything. Or what happened yesterday or weeks ago. We keep on thinking either about the past or about the future. And it's happening. Every moment it's happening. But when the density of the oscillating between the past and futures become bigger, it shows we have a stress. The stressful mind most of the time is not in the present. So what we need to do, we need to learn how to bring mind into the present moment. Because whatever we can do only in this moment. Yes. So how we are going to do that? Again, we'll see. So this is the first tendency of the mind. The mind oscillate between the past and the future. Second, mind doubts. है ना? In one of the question which somebody asked to Gaurav sir, how to prepare for the ITAT appeal. So Gaurav sir said you need to be confident. Yes. So why so? Because most of the time we doubt. We doubt on our own strength. We doubt on our own capacity. We doubt on our good. We don't doubt about the bad. You know, if somebody says, "Hey, Karan, you are not good in this," you immediately believe it. Oh, really? But if someone come and appreciate you, "Hey, Karan, you are doing a fantabulous job," you might doubt. Hey, that person might need something from me. That's why he is appreciating me. So this is a tendency in the mind. Just become aware. So how to, if it's normally happen, but when this tendency again become more severe, when we doubt everything and everybody, every moment, every situation, then it's not a relaxed state of mind. How to deal with this? Again, we'll see that. So we talk about the different tendencies of the mind. If we take care of these tendencies of the mind becomes relaxed by its own. And now I will come back to the third source of energy, which is breath. So the question is, we become aware about the tendencies of the mind, we become aware what causes the stress. Now, how to bring the relaxation in the mind, how we can have a peace of mind. So the answer lies in the breath. Breath is a very, very vital tool to bring mind into the present. Breath is a very, very vital tool to take care of the mind. It's like a kite. Have you seen the kite flying in the air? The kite might be flying far away from you, but the thread which you are having in your hand, you can control that. With that thread, you can control that kite. Similarly, your mind might be oscillating somewhere, some far future or something about the past. But with the breath, you can control your mind like the thread control the kite. How we are going to see in just a couple of minutes ago. So the breath. There are different the breath is having a very, very good importance. We need to know about the breath. Some of the facts I would like to share with you about the breath. You know, there is one study done by the WHO along with the doctors of AIMS, and they have given one white paper known as Science of Breath. In that study, it has been figured out up to 80% of the toxins we can release from our system through breath. It's only up to 20% of the wastage we expel from our system through urination, excretion, or perspiration. Only 20% wastage come out from our system through these things. Up to 80% toxins we expel from our system through breath. And in the same study, the another fact was stated that the average people like you and me utilize only 30% of the lungs capacity, because in the current scenario, we are having such a fast paced life. Everybody is running. We are having such a fast paced life. We breathe very shallow. We don't utilize the lungs capacity fully. Normal people only utilize 30% of the lungs capacity. What does it mean? The 80% of the toxins which we can expel with the use of breath, as we are utilizing only 30% of the lungs capacity, those toxins keep on accumulating in our system. And this accumulative toxic deplete our energy, which causes the stress. So what we need to do, we need to take some attention on how we breathe, and we need to put some attention with the breath, how we can expel those toxins out from our system. And this is what we are going to learn. So the importance of breath. Breath is very, very important. In fact, just see, you can survive without the food at least from at least 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. Some people can even survive 7 days. You might definitely feel low energy, but you can survive without food. You can survive without sleep. You can survive without the water, but you can't survive without a breath even single minute. The breath is so important. The thing without which we can't even survive, we have never ever paid any attention to it. So just by bringing attention of the breath, your mind can relax. And definitely there are other ways to use the breath to reduce the stress, which we just going to learn. So clear, I'm just repeating. So the stress is the low energy in your system. Then what we need to do, we need to increase our energy level. And to increase our energy level, we have 4 sources. The one is food, second is sleep, third is breath, and the fourth is calm, meditative, relaxed state of mind. And the good news is with the breath, with the use of breath, we can achieve the fourth source of energy, which is calm, relaxed, and meditative state of mind. How we are going to see. So you might have heard one term called pranayam. Today it becomes very popular. Some of you might practice it. So pranayam is a Sanskrit word made up of 2 words, prana plus ayam. Prana means a life force energy, which from last 20 minutes I'm talking about. Prana means a life force energy. And ayam means channelizing it. So pranayam means channelizing the life force energy. So there are so many different types of pranayams. And today we are going to learn one of them. And doing only pranayam is not important. After pranayam, we need to observe the impact of the pranayam on our system with the eyes closed. It has been said, if you want to know about the world, you need to open your eyes. But if you want to know more about yourself, you need to close your eyes. You can know about you with only closed eyes. And nowadays, we keep doing so many things to know about the others, but we don't pay any attention about the own self. So today what we are going to do, we are going to spend some 5-7 minutes to know about the own self. At least we'll try to become aware whatever is happening around us, inside us. Yes, clear? So with this, what we are going to do now is, we are going to do one simple pranayam. Some of you might know about this, and for others, it might be the first time you are listening or you are watching about this. So to all of you, I still want to do along with me, because listening and watching about the pranayam will not bring any change in you, but doing and experiencing the pranayam will definitely bring a change in you. And once you experience it, you can learn from your own experience how to eliminate stress or how to reduce stress from your system. Yes, so what we need to do is, we need to sit with the spine erect, wherever you are. If you can do with me, it would be great. And what we need to do, we need to bring a loose fist in front of your shoulders. This pranayam is known as Bhasrika pranayam. What we need to do in this is a starting posture. This is the starting posture. The loose fist in front of your shoulders. Here, when I say breathe in, you need to breathe in and you need to take hands up and your fist will open. You need to breathe in while taking hands up and fist will open. And when I say out, you need to breathe out, bringing your palms back and fist close. Clear? Okay. Okay. I'm repeating once again. This is a starting posture. Loose fist in front of your shoulders. When I say breathe in, you need to breathe in, taking hands up, fist will open. When I say out, you need to breathe out forcefully and you need to bring back your hands in the original posture. We'll do sometimes continuously. And then we relax. And then we do for the second round also. In total, we do 3 rounds. And as I requested everyone earlier also, everybody do it. Okay, let's start. Sit with eyes closed, spine erect, loose fist in front of your shoulders. Breathe in, out, 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 and relax. Open palms on your knees, eyes closed. Observe the flow of energy. Let's get ready for the second round of Bhastrika. Once again, loose fist in front of your shoulders. Take a normal long deep breath in and breathe out. Now, forcefully breathe in, out, 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 and relax. Keeping eyes closed, bring your palms on your knees, palms facing towards the ceiling. Observe the flow of energy inside you. Third and final round of the Bhastrika. Once again, bring loose fist in front of your shoulders. Take a normal long deep breath in and breathe out. Forcefully breathe in, out, 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 Keep sitting with eyes closed. Palms on your knees. Eyes closed. Observe whatever is happening inside you. With the movement of the breath, we have increased the prana level in our system. Now with awareness, let's assimilate this prana at each and every part of our system. Our awareness can do miraculous things if we use it properly. Take your awareness on your right feet, right knee, right thigh, entire right leg. Now take your awareness on your left feet, left knee, left thigh, entire left leg. Take your attention on your stomach, chest, right shoulder, right arm, left shoulder, left arm, throat muscles, face, head, entire body. This body is a precious gift given to you by the divine. Take care of it. Take a normal, long, deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your thoughts. Whatever thoughts are coming, let them come. You keep on observing them. Don't judge your thoughts. Just keep them observing. Take another normal, long, deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your feelings. How you are feeling now. Become aware about that. Take another normal, long, deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware about yourself, who you are. Become aware about that and relax. पूर्ण विश्राम करें. Take a normal long deep breath in and breathe out. Once again, become aware about your feelings. Become aware about your mind. Become aware about your body. Become aware about your surrounding. Slowly and gradually, taking your time, you may open your eyes very slowly. You may open your eyes. Good. Just become aware of your state of mind. If if you have done this, you can feel the difference before doing this and after doing this. And just see, we have spent roughly around just 10 minutes. By doing this, a 10-minute, if we can bring this change in our mind, if we do it properly and make it a part of our living, we can definitely remove and eliminate stress from our life. And if we eliminate the stress from our life, we as a professional can be a more productive and we can do more and achieve more. Coming back to the question which Anil sir asked in the very beginning, satisfaction is the state of mind, as I told you earlier, let's say, but we need to definitely do and plan and execute things, whatever you want to do. To give you an example, let's say I am based in Delhi and I want to, let's say, go to Jaipur next morning. Tomorrow morning, I I need to go to Jaipur. So the one way is I need to plan. I need to check which route I need to take to go to the Jaipur. If I am going through my car, I need to see the fuel is there, the car is in the right condition. Or if I'm going through a train or the bus, I need to check at what time the train and bus will leave, and I need to plan accordingly. And then I need to I need to go for sleep, and then tomorrow morning, as per the plan, I can go. This is one way. And the second way is I start worrying about it. Oh, I need to go to Jaipur tomorrow. I need to go to Jaipur tomorrow. Oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. This is what. With this repetition of thoughts, I need to go. I need to go. I have not done this. I have not done this. Oh, I can't wake up early in the morning. If I would not wake up early in the morning, then what will happen? When we start thinking too much and repetitively about the one thing, it causes stress. So what happens when we do these kinds of pranayams and when we take a break and break this repetition of thoughts, we can bring the relaxation in the mind. As I told earlier, the mind is a bunch of thoughts. Thoughts will always be there, and thought in itself cannot give don't give stress to you. The repetition of the thoughts, the one thought which you are having repetitively over a period of time, it gives you a stress. So as we need to switch from one role to another role, we also need to learn how to break the chain of repetition of thoughts. And there is nothing better than pranayam and the meditation who can help you in this. Yes? So, what all we have discussed, let's recap so that we can remember. The one of the biggest cause of stress is the low level of energy in our system. When the energy level is low, we are having a stress. And what we need to do, we need to increase the energy level. How we can increase the energy level? There are 4 different sources of energy. The food, right quantity and right quality of food. You know? Second, a sleep, 6 to 7, a minimum. Sometimes you can take little less, sometimes you can take little more, but on an average, 6 to 7 hours of sleep we all should take. Third, the breath, and we talk about the importance of the breath. And the fourth is the calm and relaxed state of mind. And we all have seen in our life also. Let's say if they take the example of filing a appeal only or filing a income tax return. When our mind is relaxed, when we are having a peace in the mind, we can prepare that return or we can prepare about that appeal in a better way. But when our mind is not relaxed, we can definitely not do as good as we can do otherwise with the relaxed state of mind. So my request to all my esteemed members, if you want to really, definitely you must all be doing good. If you want to do little better than what all you are doing is, start doing some pranayams and meditation. It will really, really help you as a professional and as a art of living teacher. I have seen tremendous change in the people whosoever learn about this, and you all can have this change in your life. Anilji, if you have any question, we can take right now because I am not able to see how people are responding to what we have done.
It's not yet received.
So I think
I will continue, sir.
Okay. So actually, sir, about the session, I have planned for the 45 minutes only because I thought if in the Zoom session, normally people used to interact, and here I am not able to see anybody. So I don't know.
No, not like that. People have joined through another webcast. So here you won't see anyone.
Okay.
So approximately 1,200, 1,300 people are there.
Okay. So, sir, I will suggest if there is any mechanism to take questions from them, I would love to take those questions.
Sir, I have received just 2 questions.
Okay.
What is the ideal time for meditation?
Ideal time, if you are asking in terms of how much time we need to do, so I say 20 to 25 minutes in a day, a minimum, and maximum.
At what time? Morning, evening, afternoon, what time?
Sir, definitely the morning hours are better because meditation gives us increase in energy and the energy we need throughout the day. So if we can do the meditation before going for our office, it would be good. But having said this, if due to some reason we are not able to do in the morning, any time of the day you can do just before having a proper meal. So before breakfast, before lunch, before dinner, you can do that. After having a food.
Karanji,
yes.
Karanji, should we do it this 20 minutes at a stretch, or can we give it a break, 10 minutes morning and 10 minutes evening?
Gauravji, I suggest at least 20 minutes at a stretch we should do. And then in between, if you want, you can do a 10 minutes in the evening if you want to repeat or do. But 20 minutes stretch, we definitely should do together.
Okay. Thank you.
How to use our full efficiency for work on hand with full involvement? How to use our full efficiency for work on hand with full involvement? अपने आप को कैसे involve करें ज़्यादा?
Sir, उसके लिए जैसे मैंने बताया कि we need to give our 100% to the task which we have. And what is the obstruction in giving 100% is having so many different types of thoughts. Let's say if I am taking this session right now, and if at the back of mind it's going on, I need to do this task, I will not able to give my best giving this deliberation. So we need to plan out and in such a way, whatever we are doing, we need to put our 100% in that task. Right now, in this moment, this is only thing which I am going to do. And for that, what we can do as a practical thing, think on the paper. Most of the time, we think in the mind. We plan over day or plan over week in the mind, and then it's create a chaos.
Yeah, that is very much required to put your thoughts on the paper, what you are supposed to do throughout the day. Because your 10 tasks are there, how many tasks you have completed in this particular task, what you are supposed to do, that means the subtasks, how many subtasks are there. So we have to jot down, because if we are only keeping the same thing in our mind, so might possible we will skip 2 or 3 things. So that is very important to jot down our task and subtask and planning for the day.
Yes, very rightly said. And that's what we say, think on the paper.
Yes, think on the paper. Yes, sir. One more question is here. Sometimes our expectations from your family or from manager or bosses also give unnecessary stress. So how to deal with this?
So this is a universal formula. Expectation reduces the joy. So whenever you go with the expectation always reduces the joy. Because
Always.
when your own mind is not in your control, how you can control the mind of the other person?
Yes, sir.
We really need to accept that person cannot do according to my wishes. Just imagine if other person start driving you. If he asks you to smile, you smile. If he asks you to cry, you cry. If he asks you to sit, you sit. If he asks you to stand, you stand.
Video.
Whether you like this, no. So you can't dictate your terms to the other person. We need to give flexibility, and we need to just acknowledge that this person behaves in a particular way. The moment we accept, and over expectation will not bring this thing to us.
Rightly said, sir. Expectations reduces the joy because जितना ज्यादा हम एक्सपेक्ट करेंगे उतना ज्यादा हमारा जॉय रिड्यूस होगा, स्ट्रेस बढ़ेगी. भाई उनकी ये एक्सपेक्टेशन है, उनकी ये एक्सपेक्टेशन है, या उन्होंने मेरे अकॉर्डिंगली नहीं किया, मेरी ये एक्सपेक्टेशन है. बिकॉज एक्सपेक्टेशंस आर ऑन द बोथ द साइड्स.
Yes.
You are working on his part, you are not going according to his expectation, or he is not working according to your expectation. So
Yes.
always expect, if we are having expectations, so it will give the stress.
Yes. And in the office environment, what we call is stepping into the other shoes.
Yes,
If you are finding the other person is not behaving as per your expectations, just at any particular time, put yourself in that person's shoes and see how you would have reacted if you would have in that person's chair at that time.
Yes.
So it gives you an idea that you might be expecting something from something else from one person, but that one person need to take care of might be 20%.
Yes, sir.
So he need to take care of the expectation of 20 people at a one stretch. So you can definitely then understand, okay, why this person is behaving like this, and then your mind can be a calm.
Yes, sir. One question is about the negative thoughts. कि we are having only negative thoughts. ये हो जाएगा, corona है, ये हो जाएगा. As we know that in this COVID pandemic, everyone is quite afraid of all those type of worries. But if we talk about the working culture and working environment and talk about the family, so हर एक को डर है कि the member is asking कि भाई how to remove those negative thoughts कि भाई कल ये हो जाएगा, अभी तो सब कुछ खत्म होने वाला है. एंड कि अभी मतलब वन मेंबर इज पर्टिकुलर आस्किंग कि भाई नेगेटिव थॉट्स को कैसे हटाया जाए, हाउ टू रिमूव द नेगेटिव थॉट्स फ्रॉम आवर माइंड, बिकॉज इफ नेगेटिव थॉट्स हैव कैप्चर्ड योर माइंड, सो यू वोंट बी एबल टू perform well, maybe in the society, maybe in the social, or maybe in the office.
Yeah, Anil sir, for this only I told I have shared earlier also that the mind is a bunch of thoughts, and the stress is having a particular thought at a very and repeating of that particular thought. As you said out, I just asked कि corona है तो ये हो जाएगा. When you keep thinking about this particular thing, it gives you stress. And we need to understand there are different ways of dealing with the body and dealing with the mind. Let's say if you want to strengthen up your muscles, you need to put effort. You need to weight lift. You need to do exercise. You need to put effort to build your physical body.
Yes.
But in terms of a mind, you need to let go. You can't control your mind with the mind. If you don't like something and you start thinking in your mind, oh, I don't like this, I don't like this, you can't cope up with the situation. So what we need to do, we need to let go, we need to relax. And how to let go and relax? The way I just stated, do some pranayams, do some meditation. Let go of your thoughts will only help to release these negative thoughts. Always, just I am repeating one thing, always remember, you can't control your mind with the mind. You need to let go, and the technique of letting go is known as meditation.
Right, sir. That is perfectly said. Ki meditation is the only way to balance between mind and all those things, because negative thoughts, whenever there are negative thoughts, those negative thoughts will capture your whole mind and body, because if you are having only the negative thoughts, then your mind, the body will also move towards them only. वही सोचेगी, वही उसी तरह का ही काम होगा, तो जो perfection होगी वो नहीं आएगी in that particular case. So that is true, sir. And earlier what you said कि जो expectations हैं उनको छोड़ देना चाहिए, जो प्राप्त है वही पर्याप्त है, ये अगर हम मान के चलें और उसके लिए और मेहनत करें कि जो ठीक है हमें और मिलना है तो हम और आगे अच्छा कर सकते हैं. बट अनलेस इफ वी आर ओनली एक्सपेक्टिंग ये सब मिल जाए तो वो पॉसिबल नहीं है. हालांकि नथिंग इज इम्पॉसिबल, इवन द वर्ड इम्पॉसिबल सेज आई एम पॉसिबल, बट फॉर दैट वी नीड टू वर्क हार्ड from the bottom of our heart as well as in the full potential. But जो मिलना है that we have to मतलब छोड़ देना चाहिए. वही कहते हैं ना कि आप अपना कर्म किए जाइए, फल की चिंता मत करिए. तो कर्म करते जाएंगे तो फल of course मिलेगा. And of course we have to do, मतलब everyone is supposed to do work hard. So I am 100% agree with you कि without expectations if we are working, without fruits we are working, so of course fruits will be there. तो गुरबानी में भी कहा है कि जो तेरा है वो तुझको मिलेगा, कब मिलेगा, कैसे मिलेगा, वो मुझ पे छोड़ दे. So we have to work towards that only. So thank you very much, sir, Karan sir, for such a nice deliberation, nice thoughts and wonderful experience shared by you. So it was wonderful experience to have with you here as well as Gaurav ji here. पहला सेशन स्ट्रेस लाने का था, कैसे हमें जाना है और कैसे हमें डील करना है,
कैसे स्ट्रेस को रिलीज करना है. और करण जी ने पूरा स्ट्रेस रिलीज कर दिया, बताया कि कैसे रिलीज करना है, कैसे प्राणायाम करना है, एंड एट व्हाट टाइम वी आर सपोज टू डू. सो बोथ दी सेशंस वर हाईली अप्रिशिएबल एंड हाईली वंडरफul, sir. So on behalf of Committee for Members in Practice, once again I extend my heartiest thanks to Gaurav ji and Karan ji for sparing your valuable time and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anil ji. It was our pleasure. It was our pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste, sir. Thank you so much.